Alina. Goodbye. I love you. It's really generous. Yeah. I think
There's more room to stuff stuff underneath here.
Stabbed in the side with scissors. Yes, and in that it does bear this kind of suggestibility that we were set down in some kind of area, enclosed, let's say, and that the bioavailability of more recognizable objects was limited, such that we are here looking at a situation where someone was stabbed in the side with scissors. And one might reap a sharp discursive about how some scissors are really quite special now. No two scissors are alike. In fact, I could name a few here and, if helpful, assemble sort of a database of insightful illustrative uses of various scissors appropriate for their type. Use defines the type. Fabric scissors, for instance, might have certain qualities specific to the length and sharpness of the blades, but ultimately they are fabric scissors because they cut fabric and no superior reason. Similarly, each pair of scissors has an index of variable or variating qualities, including but not limited to blade length, diameter of adjuster screw, presence or absence of a finger rest or stopper, also known as a bumper. Some scissors might be quite specialized in their designs or might have specific hole-making abilities and might be fashioned out of whalebone or wrought iron. But nonetheless, in any case, we can declare that these were not exactly kid scissors, that is to say, scissors for kids, with no real edge, no real point, but somewhere in the chief average of scissor world. Here in the space of limited objects, and therefore generally limited trains of thinking, calked out bus bitches and so much more the like, every doorway view obscured at such an angle, and it's like, quit calking for a sec. We can see all the constituent everythings in the nasty craft glue to boot. Implicitly, this is maybe where the scissors came from, some sort of arts and crafts hour that went on too late. No one was charm schooled into doing dioraman from scratch, so it probably took unbelievable rounds of time into near 4 in the morning to even ascertain the shadow of a bioavailable art, of a bioavailable craft. Who knows? Total and vicious totalizers of the totality of experience. We tear out our eyes and seat them in front of us as to deal with them as eyes, as to deal with them as eyes. It's a very tedious process, no surprise. Turning our attention to the one now stabbed, his unkind side penetration by the scissors, on which we will now refrain from long and pointless rarefaction. Enough is enough. But before we say anything else, let us observe that the moment towards which we are now turning our attention is not the moment of the stabbing, but the recognition by the stabbee of his stabbing. The time in between these two incidents was longer than one might think, as one might not usually expect there to be much of a discernible difference whatsoever. In fact, it is easier to imagine the significant experiential token of being stabbed to actually occur a split second prior in sheer anticipation. The more hysterical version of this, though perhaps an epidemiologically resonant version, nowadays more and more, is to walk through everyday life in frequent or constant stab anticipation. And it is this token, compared to the moment itself, which is decidedly and significantly that which is painful and memorable, whereas the moment itself is more like tripping and rolling on the ground, or similarly neutral, undistinguishable.
I'm already thinking about that which you were thinking. Sorry and not sorry, the slate is wiped so brusquely, so varicosely inhuman, and the lot of excess was curved to state the fact I had you wrapped. I had you stuck in between my eyes and the leg and so on. I looked you straight in the face, and your eyes straight and your nose straight, delineating the delineation. I'm already thinking what you were thinking. What you thought was over has started back from its pivoting point. I've already thought what you thought you were about to think, and I can prove it backwards and forwards too. Your own mind proof, which is a tethering in certain aspects of the bioavailable and the power spectrum, and the continuance of tautological proofs, and the slinky substance that makes itself known on unlikely and inconvenient occasions, was kicked in the kneecaps of ostensible meaning proliferation, and rendered outmoded, rendered shadowy, rendered shallow and pixelated. I drank a yogurt drink and could taste the fabric of the identity you constructed for yourself on a rainy afternoon 10 years ago. It was all there in the bioavailable cultures and enzymes, gridded on a faded blueprint and entered into the clicking, calked out mass.
I wonder what they are screaming about. Oh, it's probably nothing, but, and furthermore, some questioning impulse, it is my own utterances overheard and ironically played back at me in some sort of hit and run of unconscious feeling. Everything, you can hear everything. It was all heard and everywhere, and...
Bryce, I do not know now how to handle myself. They barely let me roam the cone-shaped object thing enclosure hideout. They barely let me roam anymore. I just float on the receding line of what was once known as my consciousness. Like a bird caught in an electrical grid.
Everything was pegged on a point, like on a grid, for instance. So we can step back and take a 2D look, a surface glance, and a enumerative gesture. In the cone-shaped object enclosure, we occupy the ring-like base of the cone. Our eyes occasionally drift towards the sky, which we figure to conclude at a point, though ultimately we do not know for sure, and on better days can imagine a more free-floaty development. But most indications are to the contrary. We resign to sit at the bottom of the cone.
I'm already thinking what you were thinking. Here's the paradox of your eyes. You form what become your memories through the movement of your eyes, but you cannot see how your eyes move, but we can. So we know your memories just as well as you have ascertained them through the thing you cannot see. We can also aggregate, without a lick of trouble, the depth of all your attractions and repulsions from the patterns of eye lingering, which are clear as day to everyone around you. Now I'm unfortunately forced to be thinking that which you will start thinking about when this is about it to be over, right before or simultaneous with the time upon which it is about to be too late.
Reticular grid work, clicking and calked out. I strain to hear her voice above the twitching currencies of variable and ill repute, the whisper of my abject mother and my millionaire wrought potentiality and my surface coat of visceral unglue sheen. I huff that which was handed down to me through time, through air sprites as the tunnels fill with highly ambiguous fumes. Everyone is constantly yelling, the women, I mean, about my keys. Where are they? Where did you leave them? And it's like, I don't know, I cannot imagine anymore. And well, some of my friends in the cone-shaped object enclosure, including those who are friends in the sense of potentiality only, have certain locks that do not require the shiny flesh of traditional keys. Bioavailable tokens such as the fingerprint or retinal pattern, as well as plastic fobs that look like bracelet charms, equipped with Wi-Fi access and location services. The Authenticate.
I'm already thinking what you were thinking. Porn addict, whiteboard, scratch and erase, fine line, text message, freestyle, currency symbols, half-hearted lawyer wretch. The stand is taken. The stand is ketamine, Olaplex, horse girl, ant farm, wispy strands of string cheese, woo woo woo. Oh, and you were doing such a good job. You're indeed my special one. All the ones whose eyes turn on and off. But you're still the most special thing. The thing I noticed in you, I still notice it. And rarely, if ever, perceive it in anyone else.
Upon this curse of the cursing, revealed prophetic instances, venge and revenge, in kind of a, oh no, it makes sense. The scissors still kind of wedged in there. What does this have to do with this? What? 25 boys with undercuts and Swedish passports. No spot of mirth in their eyes, still no spot. He was out, roaming. Not far for one to do so here in the enclosure object, conical or spheroid, or however you classify. Heads wrapping around the pole. I am delirious now. What? He says, I must be delirious now. Low potash and whatever else leaked out with the blood and the plasma. My plasma. I cannot, she says, this crack in my whole bouillon being, she says, that which I once was, and I miss it too, and can I measure to a stop doing, the sweat of the Captchas sticking under my heels? I can remember now the free-floating violence of what I thought it was. I thought I was engaging within a consensual energy exchange. I wished it meant I would just walk down the street, unwielded knife, but somewhere along the way I uncorked the explosive incidents and made my eyes tear forth my eyes. Enough of this now. So she is solving the Captchas and trying to add the digits up to 11 and identifying which of these vehicles are school buses and sliding the puzzle piece into its apportioned hole to close the gap, all the while repeating, I am not, I am not, I am not. Classic Captchas, as you might recall, those demurely curving alphanumerical threads, whispered back to us in increasingly detached tones, I am not, I am not, I am not. Well, I'm certainly not a woman anymore. It remains to be seen. It remains to be proved. I am not Jewish nor Hindu anymore. I was never not against the government. As though everything could stack like dimes, or pancakes for that matter, and that each Captcha solved, vindicated and redeemed, each solved before it, and issued a prayer to the next authenticator that the blank white box would spin and issue a check mark in its place, and that the successive loading screen would be something else besides click the Sonic the Hedgehogs until there are none left. This is a closed room in a supposedly remote area, and therefore implicitly outside the cone-shaped object enclosure CSOE, where remoteness was retired as an indicator at least 10 years ago. The room rests in a one-story structure, but the structure makes up for what it lacks in height, in surface area, and in the density of the walls, for this is an entirely new construction. Just a few years ago, we were told there was nothing else here. So this humble nightmare room is situated by design of its remoteness on the other side of the cone, and this might make no sense geometrically, but it might actually exist underside the cone base, such that as you patter down the avenues, someone might be literally under you in a remote area, forced to solve Captchas, etc., etc., and whether she is not against the government, there is a feasible and genuine menticide taking place. And as you calc all your indicators, and she clicks and unclicks her incidents, now and again, one might want to watch and see the scissors and their pivot screws adjusting in the night and everywhere, and I was promised nothing is to exude nothing except the following. I made friends with the in-between. I made it all work for the government, against which I was not. I was not against the timeline. I was not against the clock or the calendar. I was not against the highway. I was not against time itself, though I often wondered what it would be like if it could live up to its promise of super slinkiness, soup texture, sody pop, etc. I'm wary of trying to explain this thing. It's just what my life has been for the past year and a half. I just want to chill out and check my messages. 1 or 2 more lurid captchas should do it. Now, one in this situation, dehumanized in several unfortunate ways, still retains that rather humanoid quality of wanting to derive sense patterns and ascertain values corresponding to meaning proliferation, even when being led by oneself on an unnecessarily painful variety of what is occasionally known as the wild goose chase. And there's nothing wrong. On its surface, there is nothing wrong with a bit of amateur pattern recognition. Trace the matrices, red string corkboard rendered in metaphor, and you know, it's hard to imagine now. But in earlier times, the internet was actually supposed to function as a web, and you could make your way all the way around and back, and even contribute in your own special way. And furthermore, there are many patterns to be found in nature, and at any given time, 2 or more things are transpiring, and so in order to understand anything, you've got to recognize certain kinds of relationships. The problem starts when you attribute certain intractable qualities to what one might call symbols. As in, a symbol is a representation of the world, and no more. A symbol is not a fact, but is used to convey statements or facts about the world, and nothing more. The world is made up of bioavailable facts relating to each other in patterns, a finite amount of which surely we'll never know all the ways, and you know, that's probably for the best. And those classic captchas, remember them? Their enigmatic, sultry dip, calling back and forth with letters twisting, locked in vexatious grips. And one may be tempted to make certain gestures of interpretation, and to be sure they are all 100% futile, at least so far. For instance, the acronymic gesture, as one might do, 1 word per letter, and each number indicating a quantitative assessment of value, or a homophone, such as 2, approximatized as 2 or 2. See also 4, and to a lesser extent, 8, such that each curvilinear object is rendered sentence-like, a proposition, if you will.
Woe to the recaptures, the worst offenders in terms of semantic inveiglement, what with the word pairs.
Of course, doing too much of this will inevitably send anyone over the 10-second threshold of average human captcha solving time, such that it would start to defeat the whole damn point of the exercise. And as one not particularly sitting with head bowed towards the sundial or water clock, one might commit to certain aggregations of captcha information in an overarching narrative or propositionary tractation, id est, they may have come to be telling me something. But there's no real way to keep track, and any speculations, any inklings induced are likely to dissipate under the sheer repetitive density of the signals, such that on her paid bathroom breaks, only the shadow of the last few solved can linger for a moment before their obliteration. But they stay with me forever, she says. And when I dream, they call out to me in so many letters and numbers.
Woe to the one forced to confront imaginary captchas when already faced with so many real ones.
Extensive lifting of the self from the floor. Has it ever occurred to her to say, I have a disability, or I do not have a disability? No cognitive salt about it. What is happening in this picture, sweetie? This is not my job. I'm just here to close gaps by, for instance, differentiating between which of these squares are lamps and which are traffic lights. I always wanted to clean up trash with one of those grippy things. What if I went to bed and then stayed up for 10 days after that and then went to sleep and then stayed up? eyes expanding, shake, aghast throughout the possibilities, experience being nullified by eyes. The computer, on the other hand, so we are told, dreams of one thing, the greatest desire of every 17-year-old, simply to drive a car. Axially speaking, if things are more or less going well, there should be 10 additional hours spent per day not solving captchas in the closed room in the remote area. Other time for other things. I mean, what would you do? Sleep sometimes, I guess. But in order to do that, she'd have to go home to her room in a less remote area. Part of a structure, by all means a rather normal one, in fact. The walls might be a little too thin, such that in the winter months heat does not very well retain, and this normal structure might even contain something vaguely opulent to a true plebe, such as a garage, or a lock system that doesn't require traditional keys, which one could always hazard to lose, or tinted windows through which an outsider,
that is, one standing outside,
only manages to catch their own reflection. Or some combination of these, as well as the occasional appliance, catalog ordered and shared between her half-dozen housemates. So she even goes home sometimes, and there's no point being delicate here, no matter how likely detachment figures into the same sense corporeal unreal. She likely maintains by the 12th hour cloud flare a type of nausea that doesn't exactly shake itself off when the closed room opens up into the night or morning. You can make your own schedule. Eating or sleeping, therefore, is basically out of the question. Sometimes she accesses the cone-shaped object enclosure, where one is free to leave at any time for any reason, though one might encounter various extenuating difficulties in doing so during what one might call the exceptional situation. That which gives the so-called normal its ground upon which to stand, though in normal times this ground is hidden from us, torn away from our own two eyes, such that it is so hard to conceive of that we rather rashly presume it to constitute the definitive issue of the negative, the underside, if you will. Nothing that could occur twice in a single lifetime, except in the lives of preternaturally longevic ladies with their bottle tonics and pursed lips, or of strategically placed decoy people. In such an exceptionary moment, it might be very hard to leave, what with a glut of bodies stifling the exit ways, or excessive paperwork that doesn't go through fast enough, or just misplacing your keys and spending all day floating around the house trying to find them, while your migraineic wife glowers at you, vitriol leaking from both sides of her mouth.
time, which one would think to have been of the essence, dripping away.
All comings and goings from the CSOE have been conveniently logged somewhere, and are easy enough of which to make note. So we can say, without too much speculation, that our intrepid solver of captchas does traipse, knowingly or not, across these borders, entering through both usual and confusing means. And what is there to do in here? Well, whatever's bioavailable, I suppose. And in this case, by bioavailable, we mean bioavailable, including such basically legal activities as sitting on the curbside for a maximum of 30 minutes at a time, of enjoying local culture, including patronizing bars, restaurants, and arcades. Roaming, as opposed to traipsing, we will see, is technically legal as well as bioavailable, unless under the conditions of the exception, but is not always considered advisable.
I'm already thinking what you were thinking. Imagine that, how hard it was to get up in the morning. I'm already thinking about it even though you did not have to open your mouth. And why would you? By the time anyone opens their mouth, it is way and far too late. Fluid would drain faster. Faucets hooked up into sinus tubes. Slick grease the wheels of expenditure as well as personal efficacy. And my guy, I know you don't think about all the other closed rooms, like how many there are, in all kinds of areas where all sorts of human extinguishment is taking place. Your room is not the border of the real. It's not even the border of the now, like you slipped and you missed it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I know you don't think about it, because I know you don't think about it. I'm already thinking what you were thinking, so why don't you just go home? All right. Is that really so fucking hard? It's late. Why did you come here anyway? What was the point? Did you spend money? Did you not go home just so you could spend money? Is that really the best way to exert your individuality and reconstruct the identity fragments? And then you have to go home anyway. And the only thing that happened was that you spent money.
She sits on the curb and time passes. The moon is nowhere to be seen, but let's be honest, she wasn't really looking for it anyway. She says, I am probably not one chosen by God, or I am chosen, but this means the opposite of what you'd expect. There are sharp rocks in my stomach and bees in my hair, and in time it becomes time to dispose of whatever's left of whatever's left. Dispose of the entirety. She is resigned that she will never again access the critical certain aspect of her interior, tick in its tick house, uncapped by the trigger, yet so far, still yet so far. She has basically decided, it is basically decided now. There is no point in knowing who I was in the past. I had a decisive incident, and I cannot remember anything anyway. And when this moment is over, I'll forget that too. As one may have now derived from the indications provided, her interiors are not gone, or rather, they are not gone and yet not gone. You go out looking for the thing and find the box empty, but in order to have started and ended this investigation, something must have been found. Every zero is, after all, still a data point. I am a child. I am clued up to nothing. There were too many symbols, you will say, she says, speaking to herself. Meaning proliferation clogged up in the drain. No sluice gate as to unstick it. A most humble and pious request in the throes of extreme disquiet. Shut the fuck up! Let my interiority live. Please pipe down into the pipe. My blood cannot slick the wheels of time, history, or personal efficacy.
I'm already thinking what you are thinking. Cockamamie best friend eking out the peace treaty and the ratification of the agreements that will finally fix everything for real this time. Salad crouton mixer bowl of the so-called global economy. Fucking cone-ass shake exchange plaza and vomit-inducing weight loss carbonated beverages. I'm already thinking about the beautiful and wild summer afternoon in which we will meet for the first time and pick our incidents decisively thereupon. It's time, rather it will be time, however non-conveniently time. And I am thinking about it, and so are you.
You bought $10 range about one Retail is really not so around already. Latinization of Germanic words is Germanization of Latin words. So that's the big thing. Latinization of Germanic words is Germanization of Latin things. Creature X, erotic bulbs, rheumatoid knuckles, gregarious, and comely. You are my thing, my creature, the rotted bulbs and my rheumatoid knuckles, gregarious, and comely.
There is a small dog, a small animal. There is an attempt of a coup attempt. There is non-stop gore coming out of my eyelids. There is compulsion in every practice. There is a small dog with an undue influence over its owner. There are all manner of jokes being played and played out. There is a group of actual children dressed up as the sage system for Halloween. There is a little switch that lies within, and you can just flip it whenever you want to. There is the calendar, and the maximal calendar as well. There are purveyors of corruption excusing themselves as mere peacemakers. There are indicators from which we cannot bear to be separated for even a minute. There are over 20 men using a single pseudonym. There are witches applying pressure to knotted pieces of string. There is an enticing escalation of lacrimal and esophageal and pituitary suffering. There is a general loss of criticism, as well as a critical general loss. Mouth open, watching yourself in the security footage. Lower right-hand quadrant of the monitor, like, oh, is that the back of my head? Slight jump in the timestamp, skipping like a stone. And other indications this is in fact a playback at 1.5 speed. Everybody calcs in their own special way, and many do not waste a lick of time in pointing out how generally pleasant and tolerable life is now, ever since the variable reforms of the past, oh, we don't know exactly how many years, but ever since the habitable areas were measured out and gridded, ever since crime-fighting measures were advanced from their rudimentary form. You know, trains don't even crash into each other anymore, and so on. This incessant and increasingly reverent calking betrays a loomy tension in all areas of the body. Once you notice it, you can't help but see it everywhere, including but not limited to improper pronation of the feet, perpetually shrugged shoulders at uneven heights, crooks in the neck and spine that should be clinically impossible, discoloration in all bioavailable skin tones. Some might complain they have no window. Lucky is the one who is able to isolate and identify the object of their longing so easily. Lucky is the one who is yet to be let down by the fulfillment of a wish. Lucky is the one who is merely unglued in the humble presence of absence. Others might complain they have an evil twin. Lucky is the one to not have been left utterly alone in the womb or anywhere else. Lucky is the one who can sample their reflection in the tinty windows and have the reflection reciprocate their gaze. Lucky is the one who is sought after within a complete range of situations.
What do you want? What do you
I clicked up all my keys, barely kept.
And your key fob. Where'd you put it?
Key fade? What is that?
You know, the charm bracelet looking thing? Where is it?
I don't know. It's not attached to the other keys.
Well, why wouldn't it be?
Well, it isn't, so...
What do you mean, so?
So, I thought it was attached to the other keys.
Well, if it isn't, you must have done something with it.
Why? Why would I do that?
I don't fucking...
God, use your head.
Use your head. It's your fob. And you're about to be locked out of everything.
Teeming with regret, and everyone here is on a tense state, cornered in all aspects pursuant to this biolegal and non-invasive dining-in chain that bears some semblance of a theme, though we cannot quite encapsulate it in words. Overt threats jotted down on the backs of napkins and receipts.
I'm going to slice off your balls, she says.
Everything is contagious now. The scissors, the captchas, and more, through suggestion.
Why are you all so damn suggestible now? She, a different one, warbles, as she balances an entire birthday cake with sparkler candles on the crest of her generous bosom.
I don't know, the kids say, though they can hardly be called kids anymore by any historical metric. Something to do with our childhoods, perhaps? Something in the cartoons or the flavored waters they had us on at school? Well, don't blame us, she says. Those waters were there to replenish your electrolytes. After all, we saw one too many young things in our time pass away at sports matches due to critical dehydration. We never knew what they were doing in those bathroom areas. Purging, the kids say. Yes, she says, that's right. But we didn't know it at the time. And we were just trying, and overcompensated maybe, to prevent random dehydration deaths. And damn, I'm sorry, I didn't know what the hell was in the flavors. Still don't. No one knows. Now blow out your candles.
Her honesty is, I think, the most attractive thing about her. I'm already thinking what you were thinking, and unfortunately I think you in fact did not think what you thought. Your inputs got clicked and flagged as invalid because they were. Swimming, pulling. A lone life twisted of variable and no reputes. I'm quite unchuffed to know the way and how you were unable to think beyond a certain time-space artifact. Confined to an even tinier area than the one in which you were physically confined brings a great tear to my eye. And again, And by the way, in case you don't mind me asking, do you have any uncircumcised friends?
Is it impossible to enforce perception? Yes and no. In a manner, it is impossible. No one knows what you are thinking, that is. At the same time, of course, anyone can, and surely someone or something does. But it needn't always be for a nefarious reason. Thoughts are everywhere for those with organs or pseudo-organs to perceive them. And in any case, anyone can get overloaded with suggestion, and furthermore, certain tendencies of suggestibility as a culturally or socially inherited quality can be brought out, such that, well, no specific perception need be enforced, because that would be just so much work, really. The modes of which have, as we just said, been overloaded to the extent that the sensate world can no longer be metabolized, and... Okay, I guess you can guess where this is going.
I'm already thinking what you were thinking, even as truly as you're sloppily staggering, stumbling to get up and remember, and then turn aside and embrace ontological impotence again and again and again, even so much as it appears impossible. It seems sometimes as though you were made. You were put on this here conical earth to torture a low-functioning animal with little to no cognitive salt, such as a clam. Did it happen to occur to you to think? I mean, I know it didn't in this particular case, but nonetheless, blathering on about wanting to be a subject. I want to be a subject! Kissing your pants. I want to be a subject! Okay, we heard you this time. The leaves fall as the past erases the future.
There is a thought to action to thought coordinated occurrence. There is a blight of human opportunities. There is a fast-forwarded sex tape with inverted colors, kind of scary. There is a very evil, unspeakable poem. There are sans serif terror zones and bioavailable cashback bonuses at participating locations. There are B12 shots being administered during a meteor shower. There is an act of love or, and this is just how it is sometimes, an act so strange it just leaves you questioning all your love concepts and so on. Matcha that kills you. We sit long hours in silent contemplation. But as for us, we cannot much see beyond the signs and undertake the process of milking them, and hence suckling. And the hard suck of the milk makes real the calc, hard plaque in the peepers. 1990 has now become 990, a 10th century the weight of which cannot be lifted from the crowns of our heads. Violence is more than a way of life, insofar as it characterizes life itself, such that non-violence, or the absence of violence, is actually one of the most pernicious incarnations of violence, and is technically a negation of life. Violence as a subject in the CSOE takes on a hysterical character so tedious to describe that we will refrain from doing so in any way that could be called complete, as doing so would require a whole vocabulary of annoying actorish gestures for which no one has the time or the stomach, and give anyone that shudder of well-worn secondhand embarrassment from simply imagining them. So whether the uptick in scissor crime means something in the grand scheme of things or not is, flatly or conely, none of our business. It is all I see, my locking together of internet connection and more. There was a spate of scissor crimes that came to appear fractally. Stochastic is the worm, looking like a stream drainage pattern. We say this with utter assurance, though we know so little about streams ourselves. There was a spate of problems with commonalities of names, numbers, and birthdays, and at one point, scissor crimes that did not require the use of any actual scissors. She was always trying to make the jump, you see, and she was being stifled in the most insidious manner. Sheer bliss of the wet chloroform rag, time within. She ate of time, and she tore through the new one with the same absence of virtue. So-called law enforcement was rather pleased, as you'd expect, to be able to anoint themselves managers of the scissor wave epidemic, as opposed to would-be extinctionaires of aberrants. We can all be a little aberrant sometimes, simple as our lot in the function and our function in itself. Sometimes.
Turbulent personalities have a couple bioavailable options. Aggrieved workplace fusion of the self with the defected external object, neurochemical and radiomagnetic treatment, open your mouth and close your mouth and open your mouth and close your mouth and undergo more and more treatments in time, or turn laconic and invest yourself in activities that don't involve anyone else, such as roaming.
Feet on the ceiling, a humble review of microcognition. I wish I could remember and furthermore wish. I wish warm, soft, sticky excess. I wish I could click myself clean.
I think that's so funny. What do you think?
I wish ancient grain, an ear of corn.
We saw her everywhere.
I cannot bear to be a slowed down at this point. I would shudder a collapse and remain as to complete the nothing.
Not me. I had no idea.
I didn't mean to break with it. I spoke not one word, and I was entirely devoted to the image word and the word image.
Do you remember the baby poker?
There was this sense of being underground, maybe literal,
I don't know. I feel like this is totally dissimilar.
and transfer and punishment.
I'd like to see her calc her way out of this one.
I cannot quantify the absolute revulsion appearing before me whenever I'm astride a reflective surface.
She had the gall to crisis cry her ducks into the night. That which echoes only one's crudest assumptions back towards that which echoes only poor impulse control, and poison dog donut, and the unrelenting ice machine of human indication. In between and in before the edict of moderate self-control overran at last the steam emanating from and through our internal organ clocks and lacrimal and intestinal excesses.
The level of discernment required for the job of captcha solving does not exclusively imply literacy in the way one might typically think of it, i.e. proficiency. But an ideal candidate for this position should demonstrate enough acuity with the core TASDF to lower human captcha solving time to its socially necessary amountage. Nonetheless, she bids pathetically to turn off her learned capability to perceive text as language. And give her some good gut for trying, surrounded, as everyone is, by text addicts, involuntarily contracting and lengthening the muscle around their lens, which, despite bearing the same name, is not to be confused with the analogous part of the substitute eye, whether carried on the bridge of the nose, or in the pocket of the pants, or shoulder bag, or street-facing building facade. And there might have been, in fact, who knows for sure, this looming wall of image, probably a video ad for something or other that broadcasts or transmits in so many words, some catchphrase attesting to the eternality of the individual, something along the lines of, your trauma does not define you, for instance. And even though it can only be calc and nothing more, it could be an ad for soda pop, you know. Sometimes an entirely non-deliberate double meaning can arise and stir or trigger or induce some form of cognitive package reinstallation. With great regret, we know too well she is no robot. I mean, she doesn't inject herself. What? No, she definitely injects herself.
She might inject herself, but not with what you would expect.
She could have learned to inject herself appropriately. She could have learned to write a poem about her experience.
And from now on, it is too late.
Now, this is kind of a secret, but everybody knows it. But must never really think about it, or otherwise think it pointless or inappropriate to discuss in polite or serious discourse. There was a spate of circulated images, and we thought no one knew we were watching them, a Chiblo would say. Could one actually talk and not just count? This was when we were small. We saw a mock simulation of our own births featuring a pregnant version of our well-known cartoon character, this one attacked by a perverted superhero using scissors and needles and maybe other things. But until now, we hadn't had much to do with scissors outside of the occasional arts and crafts hour at school, and even and still, many of us cannot really create a bioavailable diorama from scratch. Oh my God, did I actually just say that out loud? So, in a way, the scissor crimes have existed for a while in the popular, repressed imagination, and their resurgence in the publicity sphere has triggered, consciously or unconsciously, a wretched form of playback, fast forward, rewind, etc. Such to the fact many of us are now locked out of life and find ourselves under the glint of scissors reflecting light, suddenly rigid and unable to form words as such. The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. Libidinal misapprobation and assumed salivary gland inhibitors that lead to everything just tasting like yogurt.
I can't pretend any of it makes sense. I was just doing my room, not going anywhere. Perhaps there was some sort of encounter, a mean flash of light somewhere along the way. You know, it's getting out of control, by which I mean the real epidemic is the lights. Someone needs to step up their job at the regulations desk. I mean, really. And the next thing you know, I am bleeding, as it were, trying to remember something irrelevant. Names and locations skipping at 40 miles an hour at the frontier of my memory lobe. The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue.
I love you, my lettuce, is what she said to me, looking me straight in my eyes, and then I felt it going into my thigh. You know, that's where my femoral is, that is supposedly the fourth largest artery in the body. And I was like, I don't know who the fuck you are, and this is like really upsetting and everything, but this reflexive passivity set in. Like this passivity I didn't even know I had, came out of nowhere nearly just as fast as the scissors did. And I was just thinking like what kind could these possibly be? Because some scissors, you know, don't do very much, while others I imagine could be quite serious. You have fabric scissors, for instance. I know because my mom used to make costumes for TV, and those can be quite sharp. And I was wondering, like, do they cease to become fabric scissors when you use them on something that isn't fabric, such as legs? The spinning axle of social currents, CF, currency, manifests as the decisive form of human transport convergence. In this case, not very uniquely, the axle is the road, not the paved surface itself, but the whole critical driving economy. And, as stated, this is nothing unique to the CSOE, the certainly unmistakably donutty quality of the shape of the highway gives this convergence a blatant quality, viduous banality, if you will. And so, as with any such feeling as preoccupies the coneheads' heads, including feelings that can hardly be said to have much to do with emotions, but are nonetheless very much felt in our hearts and bleed out the corners of our eyes and so on, the scissor emergence, or resurgence, is somehow most apparent on the roads, where no scissors may necessarily be physically present. And in a way, the only true measure of honest feeling resides in the erst social microtransactions of the pass, merge, signal, and so on. That being said, is there an imminent self-murder happening? No, sweetie, because we're in a car. Dialect hyperminorities employ variants of non-rhotic R. True, but the reflective glint of that which could be coming from your keys or something entirely different, gainfully sharper, etc., gets in the way, blinding in more ways than one. And so, as a potential result, Everything being connected doesn't imbue signs with preeminent meanings, by the way. One might encounter crashes caused by stopping and staring for no reason, where no bright phone screen nor engrossing round of cat's cradle can be necessarily determined responsible. Violations of the instilled logic and the direction flow of traffic. Cars ending up in situations like, how did they get there? Trees moving by themselves. No, not quite. Cars moving by themselves. Not exactly. Rome limit enforced. I don't trust anything that happens, some say, and also fondly recall the days where they could trust something that happened. Know it's all about the push pins?
What will you do when your scissor license expires?
Cognitively speaking, that is.
What does that mean?
It doesn't.
Does this have something to do with that green drink that kills you?
My stomach hurts. It didn't sit too well with me.
No, well, actually, it's like a computer thing, so you can't vandalize websites. You've probably done a million of them before. You probably just don't remember.
It's not as serious as all that. It didn't do anything. And then I was stitched up just fine, so what's the deal with that? It is a shame what they were doing to her in that room. I don't really understand it too good myself, though. Of course, I use computers like everyone does. I mean, a really impalatable kind of occurrence takes place at a rather frequent interval, but at a low enough density. And furthermore, there are little things you can do sometimes to offset the chance of them happening. I would never get on a helicopter, for instance. At the very least, you would have to pay me. Personally, I consider myself very blessed. Now, if you excuse me.
Open into a world of consequences.
I love consequences.
I didn't mean to break with it. I spoke not one word, and I was entirely devoted to the image word and the word image.
Soon it will be time to go to war with our derived doubles.
Who is to say where or whence, or rather whither, has gone the moon? Here we have laws of true and consequential love, and I know what you will say. You will say, sweetie, that is just not something bioavailable. But it's real nonetheless. I love you, my lettuce, and I love the thing that I saw everywhere. And now, to be indicated, my friend, who is very, very dear to me, Robert Consequences.
Some are saying she died in custody, through the quick trick of not drinking any water and hoping no one would notice. Some are saying that an already incarcerated person was given a new name and background and trotted out as the sole progenitor and purveyor of the scissor wave, and was subsequently done away with by inmates with whom she had pre-extant long-standing conflict, portrayed as a spontaneous retreat from bioavailable life. Some are saying no one has ever been found or held accountable, and that points to a universal base desire, a common urge towards violence as a way of life. Some are saying that the new statistics are not a good indicator that the scissor wave is in fact over, and in the interests of people's blood and plasma and auto-perception of safety and ability to participate in the textile of the societe, the regulations must remain. And furthermore, an increase in benevolent social conditioning must occur, not conducted by the police or state bureaucracy, but by the average citizens converging upon one another. Some are saying she was obviously a foreign infiltrator, and unusual CSOE entrances and exits must be scrutinized. We've been too lenient. Obviously, the records, ambiguous public knowledge here, were a good start. But look, we've compiled all this interesting data, because all data is interesting to someone, and we need to start utilizing it in creative ways that we'll be able to construct and predict the next scissor wave, so we just cannot be surprised anymore. We cannot let ourselves be surprised by anything.
Whereas After all this time, there remains a certain level of confusion pursuant to the following areas. Aspects of common life in the cone-shaped object enclosure, henceforth referred to as CSOE or the CSOE. The probability and actuality of the spate of scissor crime in the closed room in the remote area. Whereas, we are in our diminished capacities as one, still though barely human, still trying, and have compiled relevant information where it exists regarding the above three areas. Whereas the CSOE is a term given to an actual place, a city of sorts, and this city had at one point a more recognizable name. But it is long out of use, and there is no point. In fact, it would be seen as culturally insensitive in referring to it by such a name as opposed to CSOE, which is kind of affectionate, cute really, kind of how you might address or refer to your child as a slug or a weevil. Whereas the residents of the CSOE, affectionately called coneheads by us that do not live there. Please note this is not a racial or ethnic or eugenicist term, have, as demonstrated above, a propensity, of which they are individually largely unaware, towards the creation and use of neologisms.
For example, bioavailability is a theoretical concept approximating actuality as a product of determinable norms, expressible as bioavailability equals possibility plus publicity plus limitation, aka necessity, i.e., actuality and hiding from itself.
Whereas there are a number of regulatory bureaux operating on behalf of the state. Whereas one of the oldest of these bureaux, dating back about 100 years, is the Bureau of Light Regulation, responsible for adjusting the brightness levels of existing light sources, as well as providing permits for industrially bright light-emitting devices. In the past, their main task was to ensure minimum brightness levels in inhabited areas for safety purposes. No more lives lost from falling into a crack and bopping one's head. Whereas, currently there is much debate inside and outside the Bureau about sources of light being too bright, which, as everyone knows, can cause temporary blindness and is a potentially fatal hazard to motorists. The more controversial aspect is this strange gray area about the subjective efforts of too bright lights in everyday life, of the outside regulating/dysregulating the inside, with a special focus on sleep patterns, mood regulation, time perception, color recognition, attenuation and deattenuation of gaze, and retinal movements more generally. Whereas overly bright lighting is a technique used in prisons for the subjugation of prisoners and as a means of increasing their anguish, i.e., dysregulation of the inside through the outside. Whereas a Captcha, or completely automated Turing test to tell computers and humans apart, manifests itself as an interactive puzzle that ranges in user experience from neutral to fun to infuriating.
For example, see reCAPTCHA, a puzzle consisting of two words, semantically unpaired, made squiggly and hard to read, one being a control word and the other an unknown variable word. Solving this puzzle can be achieved by typing the control word correctly, or close enough. However, one cannot know which word is which, so it is upon the solver to type both words correctly, or gamble on which word is the control word.
Whereas scissors, both consumer and professional, can incur injury, including fatal injury akin to knives, assuming sufficient force is applied. This is especially true of the latter, but still applies in the case of the former. Studies have shown scissors to be more dangerous in this regard than screwdrivers. Cultural anthropologists and the like may take note here that the potentiality, i.e., possibility, of scissor violence far outweighs its heretofore historical prevalence.
A few questions. A. Who is the Captcha solver? Was she a resident or outsider of the CSOE? what doubts have been raised about this connection? What is the alleged connection between the Captcha solver and the perpetration of the scissor crimes, henceforth referred to as the scissor wave? Question C. What was the extent of human and biosocial fallout due to the scissor wave?
A1. The Captcha solver was an employee of a software company providing third-party services to other web and software and firmware companies, as well as highly motivated individuals to bypass required CAPTCHAs in any variety of contexts. The services offered were described as themselves completely automated. However, this was pure marketing and in fact deceitful, as the contracted CAPTCHAs were in fact solved by human employees, themselves contractors, turned independent. A2. The still unnamed solver of CAPTCHA suffered from a likely hysterical belief that her interiority was dead, completely killed off, yet she was physically very much still alive. And this apparently brought her much anguish, and spurred her to a type of desperation that potentially escalated to so-called random or meaningless acts of human versus human aggression. See below for further explication of this potentiality. A3. It is unclear as to whether the scissor crime ceased entirely after the apprehension of the accused. As time goes on, it seems less and less assured that there was only ever one who wielded the scissors, excluding any accomplice or copycat, but given the decaying possibility of the uncovering of additional evidence, we are less and less likely to ever know. B1. The Captcha solver was apprehended in a mall food court while attempting to use a self-service kiosk. She had ordered a gut health-friendly version of a breakfast pastry item, popular with children, that was eventually made illegal and involved the use of a microwave or toaster oven, even though it was culturally considered normal for children to eat them out of the packet. She was notably compliant with law enforcement and did not cause problems. B2. Because of the sudden and mysterious abrogation of the investigative process due to the reported death of the accused in custody, we cannot attest to the prosecution's case. However, it has been widely speculated that the self-service kiosk had a front-facing camera that noticed an aberration in the eye movements of the accused. Note this process as being distinct from run-of-the-mill applications of automated face-matching programs, which sent off a series of discrete notifications to those in the know who triggered the dispatch of authorities. C1. No less than 2 distinct people sustained serious but not fatal injuries to their limbs. Someone was stabbed in the side. He says he's okay, but is probably in a state of total anagnoresis. Edit. Total anosognosia. At least one individual died in tandem with the appearance of scissors, but at least in this one confirmed case, the deceased had a significant differential health preference, such as chronic weakness or inflammation of the heart. So in terms of what was the critical juncture of obscene palpity, it is impossible to tell. A noticeable disturbance in biosocial morals and driving etiquette was observed in the media. It is in this way we can speculate about scissor crimes that did not require the use of any actual scissors. C1.2. In response, the state enacted a number of measures, including information awareness campaigns, as well as serial-comic measures against human freedoms. The height of this humor involved the presentation and scanning of personal ID cards, wait times reduced for those who provide bioavailable tokens upon the purchase of scissors, and the enforcing of limits on the right to roam for the safety of the roamers.
Furthermore, what is the theory of the undersigned as to the correct understanding of the scissor wave?
Whereas we do not posit to know the absolute truth, and despite our best efforts, Many deep ditches have been dug informationally such that we may not traverse the entire plane of this issue for fear of being irrevocably trapped. Nonetheless, we offer our readers to consider the following. A1. Theory of incitation. This refers to making memorable of an event within a string of identical days. For instance, forging a psychic imprint the only way we can, through violence. This is consistent with the findings of the accused being in a state of perceived mental disparity with the rest of the world, turned into an unfeeling machine within a physical eggshell prison of respiratory and evacuatory systems. While one might insist upon the frantic or emotional character of the acts committed, this motive of so-called incitation is corollary with the violent or bloody aspects of primitive ritual, including our rather commonplace contemporary practice of neonatal circumcision. A2. Theory of resentment. This is compatible with the previous theory, but emphasizes an aspect of conscious social comparison, and thus assumes the accused capable as such of making these comparisons, representing a bridge from example, I can never be normal again, to bitterness enacted. They must experience what I experience, the critical aspect being pain. Obviously, this implies a healthy dose of conjecture, and we measure this resentment tendency against those which are already culturally and socially extant. B1. Theory of chaos, or crime is caused by paying attention. What we call crime is in fact the derivation, or integral, of a function which is occurring constantly without end. That is, so long as there are bodies and relations, their interplay is always confrontational, even in the most advanced and peaceful enclosures. Ergo, let chaos equal the state of nature. These interactions become known as crime only upon being measured. And crime becomes a thing of measurement in such a way that the law itself figures very little into it. Crime has nothing to do with individual or group tragedy. In itself, it is an accident of perspective, of collation. B2. Theory of cooked books. No less than 1% of the crime report details in the hands of law enforcement is falsified, dreamed, concocted, or misremembered in critical ways. Lies are contagious, even on accident, and give birth to other lies to keep themselves company. Historical prevalence check. We might also conjecture a correlation between the media relevance of certain crime incidents and their falsehood constitution. C1. Theory of mutual cooperation, erotic or semi-erotic, or autoerotic contact, pseudo-transgression, and time-limited rapid cycling aberrance. Aberrance is the prerequisite of normativity, and living in any social tetrahedron, that which positions itself as the opposite of that which should be, and yet underscores all bionormative thoughts and actions, proceeding from incest and advancing through murder, or maybe the other way around. Any living thing, and perhaps beyond that which we usually think of as being alive, contains and emanates erotic or sexual energy. Energy is being regulated and dysregulated by external and internal factors and has to go somewhere. Insofar as aberrant-style releases of excess erotic energy go, they must stay within their self-same framework, meaning that they cannot unground the society which pinches its nose at it in any way that can be seen as truly rapturous. It is in this way we can describe aberrance as time-limited and rapid cycling.
None of these theories can be comfortably endorsed by anyone with an anxious reverence of reasonable doubt. So, we have presented them here in unvarnished form for one in the future with more evidence on their hands than we to make the connections one wills.
What more can we do?
There is no more we can do.
Praise be to the Almighty God.